Welcome to Beyond the Blend, the podcast that goes behind the science and talks to the people at the heart of the lubricant market, telling the real story of the people who make the lubricant market move. With real insight and honest conversations, we aim to show off the people's side from across the entire lubricant supply chain. Join me, Steve Knapp, and Rob Taylor as we delve behind the scenes of the lubricant industry. Let's go. So let's start with a quick 5 from 5. Gemma, is it a beach holiday or a city break?
Beach holiday, definitely.
Especially this time of the year. Keynote presentation or boardroom discussion?
Keynote presentation. That's weird, that one,
Wow.
isn't it? Yeah. Keynote presentation, you can have fun with it and you can just get up there and say what you need to say. None of the unnecessary stuff,
Stuff? Brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
Morning customer meeting or evening networking event?
Morning customer meeting. I'm more productive in the mornings. I'm an early bird, much to other people's annoyance.
So, if you're reading a book, is it fact or fiction?
Fiction. Just nice to have a bit of escapism, isn't it, sometimes?
Okay. And here we go. The last one, a full English breakfast or fruit and yogurt?
Oh, fruit and yogurt. Fruit and yogurt at the minute.
Very good. Very good. Gemma Stephenson, thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Blend. And everybody listening in, welcome back to Beyond the Blend, where we showcase the people, the purpose and the motivation shaping the lubricants world. My guest, as I've mentioned, is Gemma Stephenson from Cargill Bio. And Gemma's work sits where science meets responsibility, sustainability, raw materials, product carbon footprints, and practical ways that industry can lower its impact without losing performance. Now, I heard Gemma speaking at the UKLA, and I know that you've done this at ISIS as well, and you're part of the UEIL sustainability efforts. And I know that you've started out deep in tribology before moving into this commercial leadership space. So I'm really, really looking forward to exploring the why behind your work, and how your purpose has guided your career moves, and practical steps that you can share with others who listen in to Beyond the Blend, and how they can learn from your amazing story. So with that, let's dive in. Take a moment just to introduce yourself.
Bless you. Now I feel like you did a cracking job there. Thank you. So it's nice to see you all. I'm Gemma Stephenson. I'm the business development manager at Cargill, which sounds really fancy when you say that. But I think, to your point, Steve, it's sort of just been a journey that I just seem to have just stumbled along on. It's made me really, really happy. So I started out in 2012. I actually joined what was Croda lubricants in the technical team. So I joined them on a graduate scheme, working in the labs, doing some MTM testing, making up blends, just really familiarizing myself with the lubricants industry. And it might sound really strange, but I just fell in love with it. Like, Croda had quite a big personal care space, a crop care space, but none of it really interested me. It was the lubricant side, and I think it was just the incredible technical nature of it, and just how it was really real life, driving cars, and it just was super cool. And I think people outside of the industry don't see that. Do I sound really nerdy now? I fell in love with it, and there was a great team of like-minded bonkers people to work with who had that same enthusiasm. So that really sort of got me hooked. Started out very much in the labs, testing lubricants, working with real customers, speaking to real customers, solving problems. It was very, very technical. And then I think people sort of came to understand that I loved talking about lubricants and talking about what I was doing. So I did sort of more presentations at conferences and that side of things. So sort of getting more involved with the commercial side, sort of presenting and telling the story and the concepts, and providing sort of trying to be engaging on providing updates on what we were working on at the time. And I was working with John Eastwood. He was my manager at the time, so he's well known within the industry. He's sadly retired now, but he was just really encouraging in putting me in front of customers, getting me involved with the UEIL and other industry groups, and just allowing me to talk at and with the like-minded people within the industry, and just getting out there and getting involved in the wider space, and not only getting involved with the technical side, but talking about it as well. So it's just sort of happened.
I love that. It happened. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think I've spoken to anybody on Beyond the Blends that have said, when I was at uni, I decided I was going to go into the lubricant sector. I actually think there are more people that it happens to, and they stumble in. Because I don't imagine when you went and did your PhD, you were thinking of lubrication, right?
It's strange. And you do speak to people and they just sort of have this preconception that it's very just dirty, boring, male dominant as well, I think it's fair to say, and quite stuffy, polluting. It doesn't sound exciting. And to be honest, being perfectly honest, when you say lubrication, people think of other stuff. Like when you're in there and you're doing it and you're introduced to it and you're working on it and you know what it's about, and you sort of become aware of all this exciting stuff that's going on, you do become hooked and you don't ever leave.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I mean, you frame quite some stigmas and obstacles or challenges there, right? So stuffy, the sort of the imbalance on gender, whether that's reality or perception, it's certainly something that I've observed being real, but I'm not a female, so I don't observe it through your eyes. But I certainly see the gender imbalance. The UKLA where I met you. I mean, I think that was a clear representation of what we see. But you've moved through what I would say the technical side, which I would naturally think being more male orientated, to a commercial senior position but again, my default would be somebody that doesn't look like you. So what was it? What was it that John saw in you? Was there a moment that kind of propelled you from lab behind the scenes to in front of the scenes that maybe John saw, or was it a moment that you said, no, I want to go this route? What was that?
I think it was a bit of both, because I think to go back to your point, when I think, 2012, how many years ago is that? Feels like a long time ago. I think because of the nature of the industry, it was it's so much better than it was. There's that male dominant element, and it was quite daunting. And I was asked to go present at technical conferences, and it was incredibly daunting. But I think with time, I've just sort of grown in confidence, and I've got to know you do see the sort of the same people around the events within the industry, and gotten to know them, and I think just developed a bit of confidence. And when you speak to these people, they're feeling the exact same thing. So I speak with the likes of Gabriella Twiding's a great example, and other huge names in the industry, and they're all the same. They're all like, God, I'm feeling a bit nervous before this presentation. So you get to understand that it's not just you, and I guess that sort of comes with time, and it develops the more you get used to it. But I think maybe John just thought that I needed to develop that, and I did develop that, and it's something I wanted to develop, speaking with people, because I really enjoy it. I love getting out of the lab and the office and chatting to people, and just not being daunted by them, and seeing that they're so normal and so lovely. And I chat with Elisa regularly, and just she's got a dog in the background. I love understanding that it's not just this corporate stuffiness. It's just real people, just who genuinely care and just really want to progress the industry and help and have an impact. I love that people element, sort of like you, Stephen, and this podcast.
Well, I mean, it is fundamentally why we brought Beyond the Blend together as a concept, was to share stories and to break down perceptions. Because to your point, exactly that, you do see people relatively frequently, and they are feeling similar things, apprehensions, fears, nerves, whatever that you do. And the more and more that we grow together, I think the better for the sector. And people like John who saw this in you, I mean, I always applaud them, because you say it was 2012. There were probably, I wouldn't say an element of risk to it, but he would have been noticed for promoting a different view, a different look, and a different feel into those keynotes and sectors. So I think that's really important. And the story that you've told, I imagine, has changed to a degree. You've probably moved from more a technical aspect to a more sustainable solution. So you're more influencing than telling now. So when did the influencing side start to sort of take over?
Yeah, so there's almost like, I like to see it as the technical is very black and white. You do a test, you get a number, it is or it isn't. There's an element of measuring there, and I think the thing that I continue doing it, and because I enjoy doing it, and what I enjoy about it is the fact it means different things to different people. You can measure it to some extent. We think about carbon footprints, etc. But when you go out and you talk to customers and stakeholders across the industry, sustainability means different things to different people. It's not black and white. It's black, white, and everything in between. I should say green, really, shouldn't I? Shades of green. And I think that's what I enjoy about it. And that's what keeps it so interesting, dynamic, evolving, so different, and keeps you hooked.
So this part about influencing versus educating. I mean, there is a real difference, isn't there, between presenting data and numbers and winning hearts and minds, and that's a different skill in itself, isn't it, in terms of communication? So I'm interested in that part as well.
And it's weird you asking me that, because I don't, and maybe it's just the stage I'm at, and maybe it's just a confidence thing again that will get better with time. But I guess I'm not consciously aware that I'm influencing. I just like to go out there and talk and tell people in something that I really believe in, and hopefully that comes across. Maybe it's something that I don't really see as influencing. This is a really tough question.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it is probably an evolution part that you talk about, right? And I think what's very clear coming through is it isn't just something you do because you can, it's something you do because you care about it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that purposeful nature of when we come to the sustainability conversation really matters, because I've sort of been around when I first joined Shell Lubricants, which was 30 plus years ago now. I remember one of the first conversations we were having was around the risk associated to EV, right, and cars, and 30 years on, and I mean, I don't say the conversations are the same, but it is an evolution, and I think that's absolutely true, and linking that a bit together, your work kind of comes where sustainability and business outcomes meet, right? So it's an agenda that could be perceived as fashionable, necessary, but fashionable. It could be seen as political and a quick way to score points. And we started this conversation a little bit at the UKLA when I was listening to you on the panel. And I guess the question behind all of that framing is, what principles help you balance the environmental ambitions with the realities that customers face? When it comes to cost, performance, availability, how do you balance all of that piece up? I think
this is where, for me personally, the involvement with the UEIL and the industry groups is super important, because I think there's obviously a Cargill business aspect to what I do, and it's, as you say, there's a certain value that the business aims to create through sustainability, particularly, Cargill, they're very hot on agriculture and bio-based, and they have sustainability reports, and sustainability claims are interwoven into the products that they sell. Whereas I think the work that is happening within the UEIL and my involvement there, it takes the fashionable element and the business and the sales element out of it, and it focuses more on the necessity and the importance as to why. And there's, people from different businesses with different agendas, different ideas and concepts, all working on the same things, same urgent things together without any of that noise, that business noise. We're not allowed to muddy the conversations with business or sales or commercial chat. It's all absolutely purposeful, and we're all working on it because we need to, because we see the urgency and we see the importance of it. So I think that's really helped me sort of detach the business head and focus more on the nitty-gritty and what actually needs doing.
That's a great answer. I mean, being in that kind of environment where almost you park the commercial side, outside the door. How has that felt, being part of a community that is sort of unbridled, unconstrained by a frame, and being really kind of liberated to think completely across the piece?
It's been absolutely fantastic, and it's another thing I need to credit John with. So he got me involved in that, just before he retired. But it's absolutely insane. And again, there's just like sometimes when I'm sat there, there's a degree of imposter syndrome. I'm like, oh my God, there's Marcus Garb and all these amazing figures. But it's amazing. And I think from the work that they've done, coming from a company like Cargill, who there's obviously a whole backstory with the acquisition of the Croda business and their involvement in lubricants and industrial products, but they are learning a lot from what the UEIL and the lubricants industry as a whole are doing, particularly on carbon footprints and thinking more about specialty products. They are learning a lot, and I think others aside from Cargill are learning a lot from what the industry is doing. They are really providing a really loud voice. And there's some amazing initiatives coming out of the UEIL that I'm lucky enough to be involved with as well. So we're going to be hosting a webinar soon on best practices, how to deal with lubricants at the end of their life. There's the recent product carbon footprint methodology, the fact that it's been third-party verified. There's so much good stuff that I'm so lucky to be involved with and work with such, like, it sounds cheesy, but they're just amazing people, amazing brains.
And they probably think the same about you, by the way. So those initiatives sound so exciting, and I'm very lucky. The people won't see this; they'll hear it. I hope they can hear it in your voice. There's a genuine you light up when you talk about these things that are gonna make a difference, right? And I think that starts to be very material, because when I start to think about questions I wanted to ask you, when I sit in presentations, I often look at slides and I look at the lines and I think, wow, that's a very clever graph, but ultimately I don't understand it, so I probably sit there and nod and go, yes, that's a good point, and and maybe others are reflecting they do similar, I don't know. But when I see things like PCF and LCA, so life cycle assessments and product carbon footprint pieces, it all kind of feels really abstract. You kind of look at it and go, how do I get my arms around that? So I guess what's your favorite way to make carbon transparency more useful? I'm thinking like for plant managers or a buyer making a decision. How do you make it kind of real?
Do you know what? As you were asking me that question, I actually thought this is something I should take back to the UEIL. How can we make product carbon footprint less abstract and more clear? So maybe that's something. Maybe that's something that we need to work on. It. I mean, it's easy for me to. I say easy. It's easier maybe for me to understand because I'm involved with it, and from a work perspective, a business perspective, I am. But maybe, Steve, you have planted a seed now that we need something to make PCF, LCA, ISO 14067. We need to make this a little bit more accessible to a wider audience. I've turned my question back on you a little bit.
Well, so some would say well done to you for doing that, right?
Oh.
But I'm
gonna turn it back on.
I'm going to push it back. So let's just think then. Perhaps if we took one of those, PCF, what would be one of the biggest, or maybe the single misconception around that, and that you find yourself correcting more often? Because that could be a way of coming up with the answer to the question you threw back to me, right? How do we make it less abstract? How do we answer the questions that we're often presented with? And how do we answer that? So let's just throw that around a bit. How could we break down the misconception, communicate that better to a plant manager or a buyer around PCF?
I think a lot of the time, and I think what I find myself doing as well internally, is what does it mean for that particular person? PCF, and it's always answering that question, isn't it? It's the so what, and it will be different to someone who's developing a product where maybe they have to have the product carbon footprint as low as possible, or someone who is, as you say, buying a product when really they just want the cost to be as low as possible. So when you throw a carbon footprint in the mix, it's just a bit like, what does this mean, and why should I be bothered about it? So I think, and marketeers would love it, it's like you need to make sure what's in it for that particular person and that particular audience. It's very complex, carbon footprint. There are lots of facets and things to consider. But if you can tie a value to it for a specific audience, just making sure that the person understands what it means to them. So we have the innovations team here, and we're thinking about how we can weave it into product design and new product development, and carbon footprint is a consideration there. So it's about making sure they understand the impact on PCF on that product, the impact of carbon footprint on that product.
The world's leading lubricants-focused trade event comes to the Middle East this January. Lubricant Expo Middle East will take place from the 20th to 22nd of January at Festival Arena, Dubai Festival City in the UAE. With over 120 exhibitors covering the entire lubricant value chain and 1,500 visitors, including industry leaders, OEMs and end users. It's an unmissable opportunity to meet and do business in this exciting region. Register now to attend for free. Head to lubricantexpo.com/ME for more information.
So what I find really interesting is when you start talking about answering things in sort of more from the eyes of the customer. And I think that's quite an interesting, well, for us, a very logical way over here at Play and Grow Do, but one when we're more technically orientated and maybe more intellectually positioned in terms of those groups, we are a bit more removed from the customer. So I think this aspect of, what problem does it solve? What does it really mean? And how does it impact my daily life starts to become significant.
Yeah.
And our work with Finnish lubricant organizations is starting to see a new role coming into the decision-making unit. And that role is sustainability managers. So have you seen the emergence of this role, not just being a voice within the decision-making unit, but actually having real decision-making power? Are you starting to see that happen in Gemma?
Definitely. And I think when I am myself in a customer meeting, I definitely see the emergence of that role, sustainability within job titles. And those people really play a role for me. So you'll have a number of different stakeholders in a meeting. You'll have, purchasing, technical, sales. And I feel like that sustainability manager or whatever their title may be is really there to translate, to understand all elements of the conversation and sort of translate that and put a sustainability lens on there too. And it comes back to your point of to influence or to steer the thinking, maybe, compared to what those particular job functions and the other stakeholders are particularly used to. I have seen the emergence of that, and they are subtly very important, that they absorb all of the information and they're able to make decisions with that sustainability lens as well. They're definitely becoming more prevalent, but also really, really important. And I think from our perspective as well, when we're thinking about really understanding customers and customer needs with regards to sustainability, I hate, but I love this term. There's a real holistic approach internally in terms of, those different areas to think about. So you'll have amazing technical experts who can completely hit the viscosity requirements. They understand traction, they understand what the product needs to do. But then when the customer says, oh, what's the carbon footprint? Can you get it any lower? That's maybe where, the sustainability person or colleague is able to really come in and steer and, provide input and guidance on that, because sustainability is becoming an absolute key product requirement now when we're thinking about developing new chemistries and we're thinking about innovation. Sustainability is absolutely that new facet. It's not a bolt-on that you think about afterwards when you have your product that meets the technical specs. It's absolutely interwoven there from the very beginning now.
And I think therein lies some of the challenge, because you mentioned a little bit earlier in our conversation, I think you used the word complexity. It's complex, and I think not only is it complex as a subject, it's complex in its impact and therefore its decision making within a commercial organization. And I think that's why people have chosen to bring in sustainability as a function. And I think as you take forward our new challenge into the UEIL and we talk about how do we make it less abstract, I think thinking about those different players and stakeholders will really help tell the story, because what it means for an engineering manager is different to what it means for a production manager, is different what it means to somebody accountable for the sustainability scorecard in an organization. So it's definitely a place where one size doesn't fit all, but it's certainly a place where I think the storytelling can be sharper and could be better. And with that in mind, do you have good case studies and things like that you readily share, or is that stuff that's starting to develop and emerge as well?
I think definitely develop and emerge. And I think as you were speaking there, I was just sort of thinking about how we need to be sharper, because even as Cargill and other companies who've been talking about sustainability for years, it's changing all the time, depending on sort of what's going on in industry, and what's happening from a regulatory standpoint as well is also influencing what we want to say, what we can say, what we can't say, and how we develop products. So it's changing all the time, and we're always thinking about what we can say.
Yeah, absolutely. So think about it through different people's lens and make sure that the messaging is resonating with them. And if we were to think about when we get into, I know you're particularly, as you've explained, active in UKLA, UEIL, and all on the sort of conference circuits. And I imagine that what we start to see is things like OEMs, additive suppliers, and end users playing quite an important part in the supply chain, right? So they all play a part. I think it's a bit of an unfair question, but I'm going to ask it. Is there like one thing that if everybody did their thing, it would accelerate progress? Is there almost like coming out of your conversations and your collective thinking? Is there that one thing that would be the button you would push and said, if we all did this, it would make a difference?
Talk to each other. And it sounds really silly because it's nothing that you can pin down, but I feel like we all need to talk to each other. There's so much happening within the lubricant space, and I've seen such great examples of progress, and it's as a result of that collaboration that it happens and that it moves and that stuff gets done. And I feel like there's a group here working on something, and a group over there working on something, and a group in China, and then there's the OEMs doing something, and then there's the agricultural industry, which Cargill are very heavily involved with, doing something. And it can feel quite disjointed when you look across the supply chain particularly. And then you have regulators as well, and, people setting policies and guidelines and things. If I don't know how it's feasible, Steve, but if we spoke to each other and worked together more, then I firmly believe that stuff would get done. And it wouldn't be as messy. So I think it's a very abstract answer to your question, but I do feel like, we've seen it where we were speaking about it recently when we all met in Brussels. It was like, if we can get those people in a room and talk about it and, understand what they're working on and maybe ask some questions, and they can understand our perspective, it's a no-brainer. It would speed things up and make that a little bit less friction, no pun intended, just make it more seamless.
Yeah, and creating those conversations. Credit to the organizations that we've referenced a number of times already. They are creating those conversations, right? So when we met in London, the whole backdrop of that was about sustainability, and that was the subject of conversation. But I was over a coffee break talking to a sales manager of a UK manufacturer of finished lubes. And they said, well, this is all really good, but what does it mean for me? What does it mean for me at the front line? How can I help shift not only my mindset and my seller's mindset, but that within the end user? And I'm wondering if you've experience to share there, because like all things, there is no silver bullet, and it's fantastic if the conversations are being created at a more senior level and there are strategic things coming out of it. We've already spoken about making it less abstract for customers so they understand it. We've then got the people at the front line that have got to sell it, right? So how do we help them? And have you got experience of doing so?
I did actually do a stint in marketing, and again, it just comes back to that idea. I think you covered it really well. There's no silver bullet, and it's about really tailoring and educating according to the audience and what it means for them. A little bit of experience in educating and equipping sales team with the tools necessary to go out and talk about sustainability, but not only to talk at the customers, but also to empower them and to make them feel that they can ask probing questions to get the right information back in return. I don't want it to be like here's a presentation, go out and sell, talk about sustainability. It's about taking them on the journey, the corporate journey, but also sort of allowing them to understand how those particular colleagues in their role can use sustainability, how it impacts them, and how they can to talk to customers and better get that information back and extract that knowledge and that learning about sustainability. So a little bit of experience in that. I do feel really lucky that I work for a company. We talk about sustainability every day. We have the nice sustainability messages and the goals and ambitions on the TV screen. So we do try and generate that culture internally that we live and breathe sustainability regularly on a daily basis. And it's very much part of what we do and how we operate. So we do try and include everyone, but it's about, and I've heard you speak about this, Steve, before, it's about really understanding your audience, knowing your audience, which sounds so simple, but it's about understanding what it means specifically for that person. It's no one message fits all. It means different things to different people. So it's about understanding it at a really personal level and allowing that to sort of come through in conversations and meetings.
Yeah. when I first started selling finished lubricants was a long, long time ago, and the CVPs didn't include sustainability as even a consideration, right? It really was. We were much more about selling volume than selling value, and as time has moved on, selling value became, probably for those that succeeded in this space, more of their sales method. Creating value, so total cost of ownership or reduction in downtime, whatever. I imagine now we're reaching a point where CVPs have some element of sustainability built into them. And certainly when we look at our biorevolution research, we start to see some of the data suggesting that innovation, sustainability, and the message being far more specific adds much more importance than what I had before when I first started selling. So whatever you're doing around building out more robust CVPs, I think really matters. I guess the point for me here as well is we've got to win the hearts and minds of the people who are selling. And how do we make sure that we're motivating them in a way that's right and proper, that they're not just selling volume.
Yeah.
They're actually selling something that is a bit more significant than that.
I love your point on, and it, to be fair, I've seen that myself even since 2012. You said 30 years, Steve. I've seen it myself, where I remember when I first started in the industry, what we put together in terms of a toolkit for our sales team was very much a generic presentation on eco-label lubricants, for example, and it was just a list of products at the end, and the sales team would go and give that same presentation to many different customers. Whereas now I feel like we don't have that. It's very much a case of which customer are you talking to? Okay, go and do your homework, go and understand, know your customer. And we don't give a one generic message. It very much should be and needs to be tailored according to their needs, which sounds so silly and obvious, but we definitely didn't do it in the past, but we're getting much better at it now. And that should be exactly the same for sustainability. I've said it, I keep saying the same thing. It means different things to different people. One customer who wants to know about hydraulic pump efficiency might not want to know, they might not care if it's eco-label approved, but, and vice versa. So it should be very customer focused and tailored and account based.
Yeah, I think the more and more work we do to tell those stories, to document them, to record them, to convey them in our CVPs, I think that's really great. So, I mean, I encourage you to carry on doing that. And if in any way that sort of work with the UAIL starts to think about customer centricity in its messaging, then well, that's a big victory. So if we was to think about as well, that being a piece of success moving forward, that we get customer centricity around the messaging. What else is going to happen in the very near future? Where do you see, maybe the agenda, or Gemma, in fact, progressing on to? What's going to happen in the sort of coming?
What's going on? What's to come?
Yeah.
So, one thing that we speak about, or we've been speaking about within the UAL more broadly, not just the sustainability committee, is advocacy in general, and really getting the story of the lubricants industry out there, which comes back to my earlier point that I do still think that there are many misconceptions about what it is we do and the value that we bring. We're going to have a new website and toolkits and very much generating awareness about the industry and what it is that we do. As part of that, I'm working with Tina Redding at Lube Magazine in the UKLA on a STEM program. And this is sort of the brainchild of Mattia Adani of the UEIL, really putting lubricants and science and the concepts that we work with and stand for very much in the hearts and minds of audiences, much younger audiences, so that they understand what it is that we do from an earlier age, essentially. And I've had some experience with this in the past where, as a company, we go into schools. I went into my son's and my daughter's school and spoke to them about sustainability and what it is. And tried to understand what they thought it was and got some great responses. I love talking to kids about science and sustainability. And I think when school told them that a scientist was going in, they thought I was going to look like Einstein with like grey hair and lab coat and stuff. But no, it was great. I find it really personally fulfilling. So we spoke about sustainability. We built a wind turbine out of some old cereal boxes, and I brought my hairdryer in, and it went round and round. And it was just planting that seed, subtly informing kids, younger audiences about the benefits of lubricants, but also the need to be more sustainable as a society, and try to make it just very tangible for them, thinking about when they get in the car to go to school, talking about lubricants, very much introducing the science behind it at a level that's appropriate for them. So what the UEIL and the UKLA aim to do is put together a set of toolkits to enable us as ambassadors or even teachers themselves to speak about the lubricants industry, science, friction, sustainability, green molecular design, obviously not using those words, but just to really get kids enthused about the industry and what we do. You put a Formula One car in there and talk about lubrication needed, just to really get them excited. So that's something I'm involved with. There's going to be some videos and some presentations and a big launch, hopefully, to talk about this. That's something I'm really excited about and passionate about.
That is so super cool. I mean, honestly, I can only imagine what your kids now think of you, being the mad scientist going in with a hairdryer and showing them how these things work. But isn't that such an important place to capture hearts and minds, and to explain the significance of the things that they do every day? And I think that's an awesome initiative.
Yeah.
And one that, going into schools and educating and, really necessary. And we find this in the lubricant space, this early capturing of interest. Now, I've seen it when in the sales, we're an unqualified profession, right? So anybody can be a salesperson. Where do you learn to do that? Well, most people learn to do it when they get their first job. But there was an organization that I represented as an ambassador for, where we took toolboxes into schools and kind of showed the life you could get if you invested in your skills professionally selling. And I can draw very similar parallels to what you're doing there, and the hope that you just capture somebody's imagination.
Just one light bulb moment, maybe. And it was just lovely. Like, at the end of term, when I went to pick up my son and my daughter, I saw this little girl carrying the cereal box wind turbine out, and she'd kept it and she was taking it home. So, and it was really nice. Teachers didn't just chuck it in the bin or whatever, but just one person, even if they just understand what it is lubricants do and the benefits they bring, is you've got through to someone. No, kudos to Tina and the team at UKLA, and also Andrea and the secretariat at the UEIL, because they're really driving this, and it's going to be great.
It is going to be great. It's going to be a success. And through the chat, we've gone through quite some journey that you'll reflect on in our conversation, from sort of the lab coat to this person now that's a cool mum with a cereal box and a hairdryer. So I mean, I whether that was the career path that John had for you, right? But actually the pinnacle is a career is a cereal box and a hairdryer.
Cereal box wind turbine. But that's what I love. I just loved talking about it. And again, it comes back to that point of just tailoring the message to the audience, I think. And the kids just loved it.
If we was to look back over all that whole journey we've spoken about, there's clearly there's a way to go. But if you was to share a learning for somebody, somebody who's doing their PhD, somebody that's maybe, not sure whether this is the space for them, what would be sort of the advice or the learning that you would share? Now you're in these more influential rooms, senior position at Cargill. What kind of message would you share back to these guys?
I think the Gemma Stephenson message would be, in very Gemma Stephenson language, is it's never boring. You're never sat doing the same thing day in, day out at a desk. You get to sit converse, listen to, be with, work with, and collaborate with amazing experts who are just as equally as bonkers and as enthusiastic and as crazy as you are, who just share that same passion and that same enthusiasm for a common purpose and for the benefits that our industry really can bring. As I just keep saying, it's never boring. It's always changing. There's always something different to work on. And there's just great people to do it with along the way.
So why not leave that as a great piece of guidance? If you're looking for a good testimonial about why to join, there it was right there in as you say, in your own words. Yeah, what I've enjoyed very much about our conversation is really the energy you bring to it, right? Because this can be such a unenergetic conversation around sustainability, and I go back to my red and blue lines on a slide, and I really thank you, Gemma, for bringing a bit of clarity and momentum to this topic, that really can get stuck in jargon. So I really appreciate. I mean, what stood out to me is your insistence on making sustainability useful and purposeful. I think for me that really, really sort of came forward, and the fact that you believe that we should be able to convey results. I guess that goes back to the lab days. There should be a result at the end of it. And I think for listeners, if this has sparked ideas, I'd encourage them to share it with colleagues and tell us what action they're going to take. And as always on Beyond the Blend, insights beats information and purpose beats products. So, Gemma, where can people find you to follow your work?
Happy for people to get in touch and follow on LinkedIn. I'm on there, and the UEIL as well. We're ramping up the efforts on LinkedIn. So
brilliant. Well, Gemma Stephenson, thank you ever so much for investing some time talking to us on Beyond the Blend. It's going to be a super episode that people have just listened to. Loads of insight. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
The world's leading lubricants-focused trade event comes to the Middle East this January. Lubricant Expo Middle East will take place from the 20th to 22nd of January at Festival Arena, Dubai Festival City in the UAE. With over 120 exhibitors covering the entire lubricant value chain and 1,500 visitors, including industry leaders, OEMs and end users. It's an unmissable opportunity to meet and do business in this exciting region. Register now to attend for free. Head to lubricantexpo.com/me for more information.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond the Blend. Be sure to follow us to catch next and future episodes as we continue to explore the people within the lubricant market.